Welcome to the Robotics Brief. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sam. Glad to be here.
Today, we're talking about something fundamental that most people don't think about when they picture robots: judgment. Not just decision-making, but how robots perceive and understand the world, learn preferences, and even express uncertainty. It's less about dexterity and more about discernment.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you say discernment, a lot of people probably think of highly advanced AI, like conscious robots. But what we're actually seeing in these papers is much more practical and frankly more important for getting robots to actually do useful things in messy real-world environments.
Exactly, because what's emerging is a picture where the how of robotic action is increasingly intertwined with the why and what if. It's not just about executing a move, it's about predicting the consequences, understanding what success looks like to a human, and even knowing when you don't know something.
Which honestly sounds a lot like what a good human apprentice does. They don't just mimic, they learn to anticipate. They ask clarifying questions, they know their limits. We're seeing a push to get robots closer to that kind of intuitive learning, but in very specific technical ways.
And that brings us to our first story, DVG-WM, a new disentangled video generation world model for robotic manipulation. What caught my eye here is how they tackle a core problem in video-based world models. Sam?
You mean the entanglement issue they describe? Where predicting dynamics needs low-level temporal reasoning, but high-res video needs high-level visual synthesis. It's like trying to perfectly render a movie and simultaneously calculate the physics of every pixel. That's a huge computational bottleneck.
Precisely. They're saying existing models are trying to do both at once, which makes them either too slow for real-time planning or too blurry to capture the fine details of, say, contact-rich tasks. And that's a problem if you're trying to pick up a delicate object.
So they disentangle it. They separate the dynamics prediction from the visual generation. It makes a lot of sense. You predict the changes in the latent space, and then separately render the high-resolution frames from those predicted changes.
Yeah, it's almost like a dual-channel approach. One channel is figuring out the what happens next in a simplified, abstract way, and the other is handling the what that looks like in detail. And they claim this leads to faster inference and better predictions.
But faster and better in what context? Is this just for planning, or does it actually translate to better physical manipulation? Because if it doesn't give you finer control or more robust interaction, then it's just a prettier prediction.
They do claim it helps with iterative planning, which implies better control, and the ability to retain contact-rich details for things like pouring or grasping. The proof, as always, is in the robot's ability to actually perform the task. My concern, though, is how much of the disentangling adds another layer of complexity to debug when things go wrong. It's two models you're now aligning.
That's fair. Anytime you introduce more components, you increase the surface area for failure. But if it genuinely solves that core trade-off, where you're either slow and accurate or fast and fuzzy, then the complexity might be a necessary evil. It just seems like we're constantly building more elaborate architectures to solve these foundational issues.
Right, which takes us to freeform preference learning, or FPL. This one's all about reward design, which is always a nightmare in RL.
Yeah, reward design is the bottleneck for so many real-world robot applications. Sparse success labels are useless for complex tasks, and binary preferences, like this trajectory is better than that one, just lump too many different factors into one ambiguous signal.
And this paper, it feels like they're trying to inject a bit of human nuance into that process. Instead of which is better, they ask annotators to define preference axes, like speed, safety, quality of placement. That's a significant shift.
It is. It's moving away from a single monolithic reward signal to something multidimensional and interpretable. Humans don't just say, that's good. They say, that's good because it was fast and careful. So they're trying to capture that human-centric language.
Which, Sam, I appreciate. The idea that a robot could learn that a human values carefulness over speed in one context but not another is powerful. It allows for a more subtle interpretation of human intent. It feels like a genuine step towards more adaptable policies.
I get the appeal, Alex, but my skepticism kicks in when I think about how hard it is to actually get humans to consistently define these axes. What constitutes carefulness? Is it zero collisions, smooth movements, slow speed? And what if different annotators have different ideas? You're still relying on subjective human input, just at a different stage.
That's a valid point. There's an inherent subjectivity that you're just moving around, not eliminating. But by making it explicit, by naming these preference axes, it at least provides a vocabulary for discussing and refining the robot's objective function. It makes the implicit explicit.
Okay, but how many axes can a human reasonably define and consistently apply? Does this scale to really complex tasks with dozens of nuanced preferences? Or do you end up with a preference hierarchy that's just as complex and brittle as handcrafting rewards in the first place? I mean, it's an improvement, but it still feels like we're skirting around the core issue of robots just understanding what we want.
It's not perfect, no, but I think it opens the door to a more iterative, human-in-the-loop reward refinement process that wasn't really possible before. It makes the feedback richer, and that richer feedback might be the key to getting policies that generalize better.
Maybe. It's certainly more intuitive for a human to give feedback like this. Let's hope it holds up.
From understanding human preferences, we move to Human-as-Humanoid. This paper is about getting humanoids to learn from human video demonstrations.
This is a constant pain point. Human demonstrations are abundant, especially egocentric videos, but translating human movements into robot actions for a high-def humanoid is a nightmare. The embodiments are different. The kinematics don't match. It's a huge domain gap.
Yeah, and they're proposing a human-to-humanoid supervision framework that aims to enable near-real-time human-centric action generation, basically making human demos directly usable for humanoids. Zero shot.
The human-aligned embodiments part is the key, I think. If you can bridge that kinematic gap more effectively, then all those existing human video data sets become gold mines for training. It's about data efficiency, essentially.
It is. They're trying to get around the expensive, slow process of teleoperating humanoids or meticulously annotating robot-specific data. If a robot can watch a human do something and instantly map it to its own joints and actuators, that's a massive acceleration for data collection.
And the zero-shot aspect is what really interests me here, Alex. If it genuinely works zero-shot, it means the model is learning something fundamental about human motion and how it maps to a humanoid form, rather than just overfitting to specific tasks. That has huge implications for generalization.
My immediate question, though, is the fidelity. How much detail is lost in that near real-time translation? Human motion is incredibly subtle. Does a humanoid, even a high DOF one, have the articulation to replicate that subtlety? And if it doesn't, is the resulting action still useful?
That's fair. There's always going to be some loss, especially in contact-rich tasks where subtle wrist or finger movements are crucial. But even if it only captures the coarse motions, it's still a huge step up from nothing. You can always fine-tune with RL later. The goal is to get a good initial policy quickly.
And I wonder, Sam, how robust this is to different human body types, or even differences in camera angles. Does the human-aligned embodiment adapt well, or does it require a standardized human demonstration? Because real-world human video is anything but standardized.
I mean, if they're claiming zero-shot, you'd hope it's robust. But it's a good question. The devil's always in the details with these frameworks. If it's too brittle, then you're back to square one. Still, the promise of leveraging the sheer volume of human video data for humanoids is incredibly attractive.
Okay, next up, reinforcement learning with metacognitive feedback elicits faithful uncertainty expression in LLMs. This is more about LLMs than pure robotics, but the implications for robot decision-making are huge.
This is about LLMs hallucinating, right? Confidently saying something wrong. It's a massive problem for trustworthiness, especially if a robot is taking instructions from one. You need to know when it doesn't know.
Exactly. They're focusing on metacognition, the ability to monitor and regulate one's own cognitive processes. LLMs are terrible at it. They often don't know their knowledge boundaries, and they misrepresent their internal uncertainty.
So they're using RL with metacognitive feedback. They want LLMs to accurately judge their own performance. It's like teaching an AI to say, I think this is the answer, but I'm only 70% sure. That's crucial for any system that needs to operate safely in the real world.
Yeah, because if an LLM is instructing a robot and it says, grasp this cup, the robot needs to know if that instruction comes with high confidence or low confidence. If it's low, perhaps the robot should ask for clarification or revert to a safer default. That's a huge difference for deployability.
I'm always wary of anything that claims to make LLMs faithful or trustworthy. The underlying models are still black boxes. Are they actually understanding their own uncertainty, or are they just learning to mimic uncertainty expression in a way that satisfies the reward signal? It's a semantic game sometimes.
That's a fair criticism, Sam. It's hard to distinguish true metacognition from very sophisticated pattern matching. But if they're explicitly rewarding the accuracy of the uncertainty expression rather than just the expression itself, that's a step in the right direction. It's about calibration, not just sounding uncertain.
But how do you objectively measure faithfulness of uncertainty? It feels like you need ground truth for what the LLM should be uncertain about, and that itself can be subjective. Are they using human annotators again for that?
They operationalize it by having models judge their own performance and then use that as feedback. It's a self-supervised approach in a way. The crucial part is how they define and measure that performance judgment. It's not just about producing a probability score, but about whether that score correlates with actual correctness. That's the key.
Okay, that's slightly better, but still it's a hard problem. It feels like we're constantly pushing the limits of what these models can introspectively understand about themselves.
And finally, AdaJEPA, an adaptive latent world model. Another world model, but this one focuses on adaptation at test time.
Ah, so the problem here is that world models get trained, then frozen, right? And if the environment shifts, their predictions become inaccurate and planning fails. That's a huge problem for real-world robustness.
Exactly. Distribution shift is a killer for frozen models. AdaJEPA proposes test time adaptation within the closed loop of model predictive control. So after training, it plans, executes an action, observes the next state, and then uses that observation as a self-supervised adaptation signal.
So it's constantly learning and updating its internal model of the world even as it's acting. That's genuinely interesting. It's like a robot that's always taking notes and tweaking its understanding of physics.
Yeah, it's not just predicting, it's refining its prediction engine based on what it actually sees. That's the crucial difference. It's not just adapting its policy, it's adapting its fundamental understanding of how the world works at test time.
I like that. It addresses a real weakness of most current RL systems, which are terrible at handling novelty or changes in the environment they weren't explicitly trained on. This should make them much more resilient.
The trade-off, of course, is computational overhead. How much extra computation does this test time adaptation add? If it slows down the MPC loop too much, then the benefit might be negated. Real-time adaptation is notoriously difficult.
That's a fair point. If you're adapting every step and that adaptation takes significant compute, then your robot is going to be moving very slowly. It's a balance. But if they've made it efficient enough to work within an MPC loop, that's a huge achievement. It's the difference between a robot that fails at the first unexpected bump and one that just adjusts.
And think about the implications for long-duration tasks, Sam. The world drifts. Wear and tear changes robot kinematics. If your world model can adapt to those subtle changes over hours or days, that's a level of robustness we haven't seen.
It's definitely pushing towards more robust, generalized intelligence in robots. It's like they're building a robot that can self-calibrate its worldview.
So what ties all of these together for you, Sam?
I think it's about pushing past superficial performance. We're seeing less focus on just achieving a task once and more on how that task is achieved, with an eye towards robustness, interpretability, and trust. It's a push towards robots that learn more like humans do, by understanding context and nuance and constantly adapting.
Yeah, it feels like an evolution from can it do it to can it do it reliably, safely, and in a way that I, a human, can understand and trust. It's not just about the robot's capabilities, but its relationship with the human operator and the messy, unpredictable world it operates in.
Exactly. It's judgment, ultimately. Learning to judge not just actions, but also the situation, the feedback, and its own understanding.
What remains to be seen is how well these more nuanced capabilities scale across a truly diverse range of real-world scenarios. We're getting closer, but that scalability is still the Everest.
Agreed.
That's it for the Robotics Brief. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sam. Thanks for listening.
See you next episode. Take care.